Hey there, crazy kids. So I have just one more thing to talk to you about, and then we're done with our trig section, and that is modeling trig functions. So trig functions can be used to model what we call periodic data. So in other words, periodic data that repeats. So like, look at this data. This is data that's repeating over and over and over again. And maybe it's not real data for now, but we can use this graph, and we can take this graph, and we can make a sine or a cosine function out of it. So this is kind of, just like this whole trig unit has been an introduction, here's kind of your introduction to how we can make an equation from a graph. So in order to make the equation from the graph, I need to remind myself about the different parts of the trig function. So let me just remind you, we have a sine bx plus d. Now, problems that we did in class sometimes had a horizontal shift in here that we would maybe call c. All the problems I'm going to give you aren't going to involve that horizontal shift left and right. So let's just remind ourselves what is going on with each of these letters. If you remember A, this is our vertical stretch, and we also know that it corresponds with the amplitude, right? So if I know what the amplitude is, then I can figure out what the A is. This B, this corresponds with the horizontal stretch, and we know that the horizontal stretch has something to do with the period. And we had this formula, period equals 2 pi over b. Finally, sometimes there would be something in here with the x, adding or subtracting it. That'd be the horizontal shift. Again, none of the problems will involve that, but we might have something added on to the end, and that is our vertical shift. And remember, the vertical shift, I said, kind of corresponded to where is the center now, because the center is normally at 0, but the vertical shift moves everything up. So where is the center? Or maybe I should say, where is the center line? And that's our question. Okay, so, oh, and just a real quick reminder, there is a difference between sine and cosine. Sine, it kind of starts down, it goes up, and it returns to the middle, right? Cosine, if the center line is here, it kind of starts at the top, it goes down, and then it comes back. So it passes through the center line, and the center line is really there, but it's starting at the top. So sine starts in the middle, cosine starts at the top. So let's use all these things and kind of put them together. We need to make an equation for this graph. So first of all, we need to make the decision, is it sine or is it cosine? So let's look at the 2 points they've given me here. Does it look like it's starting at the top and going down and then back up, or does it start like it's going from the middle, going up and then coming down and then going back up? It's definitely starting from the top, so that means this is definitely a cosine function. So let me just write y equals a cosine bx plus d, and we're going to fill all of these things in, but we know for sure that it's cosine because it starts at the top of the wave. Okay, now we need some strategies. First of all, let's worry about the period first, because remember, we have this formula for period, and the period equals 2 pi over b. Now, we don't know what the b is, but I should be able to find the period. In other words, how long does it take for my pattern to repeat? That's how long the period is. And if you notice, the period definitely repeats after 4. Notice every time I repeat the pattern, there's 4, okay? And I can just see that from the graph. There's 4 from here to here. That's 4. So that 4, it would be a common mistake to say that that's the b. But it's not the b. That 4 is the period. So in my little period formula, let's put in 4, because that's how long the period is. Now I need to solve for b by using cross multiplication. So if I have like 4 over 1, I would have 4b equals 2 pi. I can divide both sides by 4 to find that b equals 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. Nice, so now I know my b. So up here, I can replace my b with pi over 2. I know my b. Okay, great, so that relates to the period. Now, we need to figure out the a. on the D, remember that the A is amplitude and the D is the center line. But since the amplitude is kind of related to our center line, might it be a good idea to find the center line first? But how, you might ask? How am I supposed to find where the center line is? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? Which one is actually through the middle? Well, there are two ways that you can figure this out. First of all, you can just kind of identify, like, here's my maximum, here's my minimum, and you can kind of count in. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think my center line is going to be here. The other way you can do this is if you determine that your minimum is at 1 and your maximum is at 7, in order to find your center line, you can just average 7 and 1. If I average 7 plus 1 and then divide by 2, I'm finding the average here. If I average these two, 7 plus 1 over 2, that equals 4. And oh look, my center line is right at 4. And that's my D, right? The center line is D. That's the 4. So finally, to determine the A, I need to... So now that I know my center line is right at 4, I can figure out the amplitude. And we know that the definition of amplitude is from the center line up. That looks to be 3. And from the center line down, that looks to be 3. This is my amplitude, so this is my A, and we have everything plugged in, and here's my equation. All right, let's do the next one a little bit quicker. First of all, does this look more like sine or cosine? Well, since it starts from the middle, this is definitely a sine function, so A sine bx plus d. All right, so now I can start filling some things in. First of all, let's start with the center line here, because since this is a sine function, it starts and ends on the center line. So it's very easy to figure out, hey, the center line is just right there. If you weren't sure, again, you could average. The maximum is at 6. The minimum is at -2. If you average those two, you will get 2. And that's right where my center line is. So D is my center line, 2. Remember, the amplitude is from the top to the center line. That looks to be 4. And from the center line down also looks to be 4. So my amplitude here is 4. Finally, in order to figure out my B, I need to figure out the period. So let's see. It starts right here at 0 and goes all the way over to 15. That's how long it takes to complete one pattern. So 15 is my period. And remember, the period is equal to 2 pi over B. If I cross multiply, the B will go over here, and then I can divide by 15 to find that B equals 2 pi over 15, and let's plug that into my formula. I'm done. Easy. All right, one last equation. This one is definitely a cosine. Why? Because it starts and ends at the top. So y equals A cosine bx plus d. All right. Cosine, I like to start with the period. I don't know, maybe I'm strange for doing that, but it just seems easier. The period's nice and obvious. Okay, looks like the period is 9 here. And so 9 is equal to 2 pi over b. We'll multiply b. We'll divide by 9. So b equals 2 pi over 9. All right, so that's my b, 2 pi over 9. Okay, now the D, I need to figure out my center line. So let's use the averaging technique. My maximum is up here at 2. My minimum is down here at -6. If I average those two, 2 plus -6 is -4. And -4 divided by 2 is -2. So here's my center line. And that looks like it's right in the middle. So D is -2. And how far is it from the top to the center line? Well, it looks like 4. Let's just double check. That's the same thing at the bottom. Okay, also 4. So A, the amplitude is 4. Well, hopefully that was easy enough. Remember that the A corresponds with the amplitude. Remember that the B has to do with the period, but we have to use the formula and solve. And remember that the D is the center line. Thank you for watching.